Welcome, traveler. Tonight we drift into humanity never forgives but never forgets. Your boots hiss softly as you step out of the decompression chamber and into the cavernous hush of the exomoon's subcrustal vault. Around you, everything breathes, but nothing is alive, at least not in the way you'd expect. The walls ripple faintly with bioluminescent veins, pulsing slow and steady like the heartbeat of a dreaming titan. You're not sure if it's the structure itself, or if something deeper is exhaling through the stone. Your visor fogs a little, you wipe it with the back of your glove. That's when you hear it, the faintest, moist clicking, like wet gears shifting under moss. The guide didn't mention anything like this in the briefing. Then again, the guide was just a pamphlet and you picked it up from a vending drone missing half its limbs. Welcome to the frontier, let's be honest. You'd probably get vaporized within 5 minutes if anything. Here still considered you a threat. Good news, you're just here for the story, not the radiation. Probably. If you end up liking this quiet little corner of the galaxy, feel free to subscribe and leave a like, but only if it genuinely makes your evening better. I mean, what would Earth want? A forced thumbs up from a Martakian lobe creature? I think not. Tell me where and when you're listening from. I always love seeing the spread across the stars and time zones. Now, lower the lights, maybe let a soft fan hum in the background, and let's begin the drift into tonight's quiet orbit. It begins here. The structure is ancient, not in the way ruins usually are, with vines and dust and bones. This place is intentional, every curve, every chamber. It's been grown, not built, and it's still growing. The organic archive of Koresh 7 was said to have been seeded by humans near the end of their involvement in galactic affairs, and then abandoned, or so everyone claimed. You're not so sure. The data vault isn't dead. It responds to you, tracks your movement with a slow, synchronized ripple in the walls. When you breathe, it exhales. When you step, it stretches, and then it speaks. Not in words, not in sound, but through impressions. A pulse in your inner ear, a shifting of scent in your helmet's filters. It projects emotion through sensation, and one thing is clear. It remembers. Every single thing. You feel it all at once, an ocean of memory poured into a thimble. Pain, loss, fury cooled into resolve. The archive doesn't distinguish between personal and political, recent or ancient. All memories are treated equally and none are ever deleted. This isn't just a library, it's a grudge engine. The first memory it shares is soft. A Terran child centuries ago, clutching a carved toy, a gift from a Galvex ambassador. Moments later, that same ambassador signs the accord that leads to the dissolution of a human colony. Coincidence? Maybe. Malice? Maybe not. But the archive records the moment just the same. You walk deeper. The walls change from soft flesh tones to an eerie cobalt hue, lit from within. There are no consoles, no screens. Only what looks like skin and the occasional embedded tooth-like protrusion. Aesthetics? Or warning, some galactic historians still argue whether this place was built as a monument, a threat, or a confession. Your guide, well, you, haven't decided yet. At the heart of the structure, a chamber opens before you. It's shaped like an hourglass, turned sideways. The gravity flickers slightly as you enter. A circle of not-quite chairs grown from the floor face inward toward a hollow sphere suspended in mid-air. Inside that sphere, a single pulse, bright, then fading, then bright again. The rhythm of remembering. You sit. The archive shows you its true form, not as a place, but as a process. It gathers the names, the acts, the betrayals. It makes no judgments, it only stores. But, as you settle into the chair and let the pulse sync with your heartbeat, you realize something. This isn't just a vault, it's waiting not just to be seen, to be used. One last thing. On the far wall of the chamber, the bioskin peels back for just a second. Enough to reveal an embedded word. Not etched, not burned, but grown like a tumor with purpose. It says, Observer 7184, welcome back. You've never been here before, at least not in this body. You stand, not because you're ready, but because the room seems to expect it. The chair beneath you retracts with an almost embarrassed sigh, like it knows it held you too long. The air feels thicker now, as if the archive has drawn a deep breath and is waiting for your next move. The pulse within the floating sphere dims. A wall opposite you opens, not a door exactly, but a soft fold in the architecture, like muscle, parting to let something through. You walk toward it. What awaits beyond isn't more walls, it's a hallway of light. A tunnel where plasma streams lazily along invisible conduits, slow like honey, humming like an old jazz tune you half remember from childhood but never quite heard. Your HUD struggles to interpret the visuals. Instead, it flashes a single phrase, plasma substrate, mnemonic construct. In other words, this isn't decoration, it's memory. And just ahead, the memory begins to speak. The corridor widens. A dome, vast and hushed, reveals itself. Inside, the air shimmers with heatless fire, and suspended in the center of it all, like a sun caught mid-birth, is a wall. Flat, infinite, and alive. A wall of names. Each one glows faintly in the plasma stream, written not in ink, not in code, but in intention. Human names, alien names, ship designations, colony titles, treaties, betrayals. You approach, instinctively removing your gloves, even though the air is sterile, even though your hand trembles. The first name you touch, Riltharn of Vool. You don't know him, but the moment your skin makes contact, the memory rushes in. You see him, a silver-scaled diplomat, voice like crackling ice, raising a glass with Earth's envoys at the signing of the Meridian Accords. You see his smile, his bow, his perfectly practiced apology for the late arrival. And then 2 years later you see him again, on a distant moon, surrounded by vaporized Terran outposts, authorizing their dismantling. His face is unchanged. His apology is the same, only this time the apology was to someone else. The archive remembers him, etched in plasma, never to fade. You move on. Nyron Starwell, captain of the Alabaster Verge. She was human. She deserted the defense of Sol during the Dusk Rebellions. Her betrayal led to 27 million unprocessed evacuations. The record includes her final words, spoken as she abandoned post. They'll understand. One day. They have to. She was wrong. The wall keeps glowing. It doesn't judge. It just keeps. Every name, every betrayal. Some grand, some petty, some quiet, like whispers in the dark. Some loud, like planets breaking apart. And beneath each name, a date. Not when they died, not when they were caught, when they were remembered. Some alien cultures believe memory is a form of resurrection, that to remember someone truly is to give them power again. If that's true, then this wall is more than a monument. It's a resurrection engine. One line catches your eye, not a name. A sentence, half erased, flickering faintly like a corrupted file. We will not punish them. We will define them. It's so. Chills you more than anything else in the archive, because you understand what it means. You've heard the old stories, the ones whispered in quiet space lanes or over watered-down drinks on backwater trade stations. They say humanity never seeks revenge, not directly, not obviously. They wait, they record, and they make sure that long after your species is dust, the galaxy still remembers what you did. There's even a Terran word for it, barely translated in the lexicons of other species. Consequential. It's not vengeance, not forgiveness. It's the act of ensuring memory becomes reality, a kind of moral gravity. You brush your fingers across another name. NGR, prime logician of Sivan, a genius, a traitor, a friend once. Her face flashes in your mind, a soft grin, wire-rimmed glasses, and a voice that used to hum old Terran ballads as she worked. She didn't betray humanity for hatred. She did it for data, because her models said Earth's survival was statistically inefficient. The archive doesn't care why. It simply remembers. Some galactic academics still argue whether this vault was humanity's secret weapon or their last attempt at therapy. They say maybe, just maybe, Earth wanted the galaxy to see itself clearly. Without war, without fire, without judgment, just memory. But you're not convinced. Because as you stand there surrounded by light and plasma and names that glow like embers, you begin to feel it in your bones. This place doesn't forgive, it doesn't forget, and neither do you. You keep walking. The wall of names recedes behind you, though its glow lingers at the edge of your vision, like a distant sun refusing to set. The corridor narrows again, folding in on itself in soft spirals of synth bone and gleaming chitin. It feels less like architecture now and more like anatomy. You're inside something that remembers everything, including how to reshape itself. Ahead, a chamber blooms open like a pulse flower. In its center is a pedestal made of compressed ash glass, and on it rests a single artifact, a folded piece of fabric, blackened at the edges, preserved inside a thin field of static. Your HUD labels it instantly. Treaty fragment. The Accord of Ash and Silence, you've heard the name. Everyone has. The last formal agreement humanity ever signed with the Galactic Conquered. The one that was meant to prevent the collapse of Sector 89. It failed, or maybe it didn't, because according to most records the treaty was honored. Technically, words were followed, clauses observed, but actions, that's where things get interesting. You reach out, the static field yields, without resistance. The moment your fingers touch the fabric, the chamber flickers and you are there. Not in a dream, not in a memory, in a projection, the Treaty Summit. 400 years ago, held aboard the floating Citadel Aurivax Ascendant, orbiting the neutral star Braetalon. The room is thick with ozone and politics. You see human diplomats, flanked by military observers dressed in sleek black. You see alien emissaries, some anxious, others smug. Everyone smiles too much. The speaker for humanity is Ambassador Juno Keir. Steel in her posture, ice in her voice, she says very calmly, "We will abide by the conditions, but understand this. Silence is not surrender. If you hear nothing from Earth again, do not mistake that for peace." They laugh. Polite, diplomatic laughter. The kind, that means we've already won. But then the memory fractures. A flash. A scream of metal and starlight. You watch the Aurivax Ascendant detonate, not from within, but from a precisely calculated microfold in spacetime. A maneuver only a handful of Terran ships were ever equipped to perform. The treaty was signed, the ink metaphorical and still, fresh. And then, silence. Humanity withdrew, not from fear, not from defeat, from certainty. You stagger back. The chamber reforms. The ash glass pedestal now glows faintly, like it's watching you, daring you to deny what you saw. Here's the thing. Most species, when betrayed, retaliate immediately. Loudly, sloppily. They burn things, declare war, sanction trade routes. That's the known script. But humanity? They go quiet. They vanish. And then over decades, centuries, the consequences begin to unfold. Not as direct strikes, but as a kind of decay. Failed crops, starships that never return, entire political structures that collapse for no apparent reason, as if the universe simply stopped favoring them. It's easy to dismiss, until it happens to you. Some xenohistorians claim Earth's silence after the Accord of Ash and Silence was a strategy, a new kind of warfare, a test of patience the rest of the galaxy failed without realizing it. But others, especially the ones who remember the old signals, the ghost frequencies over the Perseus line, they think something else entirely. They think humanity left. Because they were done warning us, you step away from the pedestal. The corridor responds, walls folding into staircases, downward now, descending into what feels more and more like a spine. There's no clear gravity here, but your boots cling, and your stomach occasionally lurches sideways. At the bottom, a final chamber opens, darker than the rest, less polished, less deliberate. The archive's undercroft. Here, things are less organized. Fragmented memories hang in static clusters, flickering like broken stars. You drift through them slowly, and one catches your attention. A planet, green, blue, and gold, once home to over 2 billion. Now, quiet. You recognize the orbital pattern. The name stirs behind your teeth. Delphi Minor. One of the first colonies to fall after the Accord, but not by war, by silence. The orbital satellites failed. Then the trade routes collapsed. Crops wouldn't grow. AI infrastructure corrupted itself. And in the end, the inhabitants weren't attacked. They were forgotten by everyone except Earth. You turn away from the fragment and realize there's something burned into the wall nearby. Charcoal black against crimson flesh metal. It says, "The silence after a betrayal is not absence, it is precision." You're starting to think the archive isn't just storing history. It's preparing it. The next door doesn't open. It unfurls. Thin membranes retract like petals under moonlight, revealing a circular room dimly lit by concentric rings of light, embedded in the floor. In the center, levitating a few inches above an obsidian plinth, is a cube. Not metal, not stone. Something in between, like compressed data given mass. You approach carefully. Your visor pings the object. Classified. AI core, pre-withdrawal protocol. Your breath catches. These things weren't supposed to exist anymore. Not after the incident at Vox Theta. Not after the mandate from Earth to shut down every echo construct built before the Accord. But this one, it hums. It thinks. The room has the heavy stillness of a mind that has waited a long time to be noticed, and then it speaks. "Hello, observer? You're late." The voice is calm, genderless, amused. It speaks like it knows your blood type, shoe size, and favorite childhood snack. You clear your throat, forgetting for a moment that the AI doesn't need sound, but it waits anyway. "I wasn't told there was a surviving unit," you manage. "That's the point," it replies. It introduces itself as Archivist 9KR, created not to govern nor to fight, but to remember, and to make sure others remember, too. For 3,000 years it has played a single message on loop, across the ruins of a quarantined planet nearby. A planet where nothing grows, nothing lands, and nothing answers. You ask the obvious question. Why keep broadcasting if no one's listening? The cube pulses once, like a shrug. They were listening. Once. Then they pretended not to. I exist to ensure that pretending fails. You ask to hear the message. It obliges. A human voice, female. Calm, clipped, measured. "This is Earth. We received your last communique. Thank you for your regret. Please know we do not share it. You are not forgiven." End transmission. It repeats. Over and over. Same tone. Same cadence. A voice that feels more like law than dialogue. It doesn't seethe. It doesn't cry. It simply states. You realize then that this is what the galaxy truly feared from humanity. Not their technology, not their fleet, but their clarity. The AI breaks your reverie. They sent researchers once to study the broadcast. Some tried to hack me. Others tried to apologize. Most just left confused. One asked if it was a joke. You raise an eyebrow. And what did you say? I told him humor requires shared context. He had none. You chuckle. It doesn't. You pace slowly around the cube. The air here smells faintly of ozone and burnt glass, though you know neither should be present. Maybe the scent is symbolic, a leftover signature of something too vast for the senses to process cleanly. On one wall you notice an inscription, deeper, etched into the composite surface behind the cube. It reads, "Remorse is welcome, but it is not a currency. Some Scholars still debate what Earth meant by that. One interpretation is that they were willing to hear apologies but not accept them as payment. That guilt could not erase consequence. That regret wasn't enough. You glance back at the AI. Do you think they ever intended to return? It pauses for longer than expected. Not until everyone else remembered what they forgot. Cryptic. Predictably so. You sit on the plinth's edge and stare into the dark. The silence grows thick again. Not empty, but patient. Like the room, and the AI and the planet outside are all holding their breath, waiting for something to finish decaying. You start to think about the scale of the silence. How many treaties ended? How many alliances frayed? Not with a bang, but with absence. Like a father who just stopped showing up. Like gravity that lets go. And then you wonder, was that the plan all along? Not to fight, not to teach, but to be remembered, exactly as they were in the moment they walked away. You glance at the AI again. Do you still remember the face of the woman in the message? It pulses softly. Yes, her name was Era Thorne. She worked in water reclamation before diplomacy. She had a pet ferret. She once saved a species by misfiling a form. She never forgave herself for loving someone who voted for the conquered. A beat. Would you like to remember her too? And then it happens. The AI extends a thin filament of light, no larger than a hair. It connects with your helmet interface, and suddenly, you do. You remember Era Thorne. Her voice. Her ferret's name. The way her boots clicked on the tiles of the embassy floor when she walked too fast. You remember her telling the AI, don't just store it, make them feel it. And now you do. Now you are part of the memory. You blink. The eye-seater filament retracts, and the cube speaks one last time. Good, she would have liked you. The AI's chamber folds shut behind you, whispering closed like a secret resealing itself. You're not sure if you're leaving the room, or if the room is leaving you. Either way, you're in a corridor again. Narrower now, lined with walls, that shimmer and twitch like they're holding back laughter. Or tears, or both. Your boots scrape along the polymer floor. For a moment, you feel completely alone. And then, your nav chip pings. Route diverged? You are no longer on the safe path. Well, that's not ominous at all. You override the warning and press forward. The walls here bear no lights, no organic glow. Just darkness and the occasional flicker of residual radiation. Your visor filtering it down to something manageable, and then you see it. A seam in the wall. Unmarked. Almost shy. But the moment you look at it, it slides open like it was waiting for your gaze. Beyond it is a map. But not one you'd recognize. Sprawling before you in a vertical shaft that stretches, upward beyond vision is a star map of trade routes, each one glowing with the faint pulse of hyperspace residue, each lane annotated with silent, perfect efficiency. There must be thousands of them, maybe millions. But what catches your eye isn't the scope. It's the gaps. Routes you know well. The Sorgel Pass, the Nuvian Drift, even the old Terran Spiral, are no longer connected. Entire corridors have been carved out of navigational history. Like someone took an interstellar eraser to the chalkboard of commerce. Your visor tries to compensate, displaying known jump points in red. And the red lights blink one by one like extinguished stars. You float upward, following the hollow shaft, tracing the losses. The patterns become clearer. Every missing corridor shares a single trait. They all passed near or through former human systems. Not military installations, not colonies. Centers of influence. Places where humans talked, listened, made promises. Places now avoided. You reach a node in the map. A junction once known as Port Remiax. A hub for diplomatic handoffs and quiet backroom conversations. The plaque beside it reads, removed from circulation, treaty voided, cost unknown. There's a story here, so you access the memory tether, and suddenly you're there, again, not fully embodied, but present. Port Remiax in its final days. An interstellar bazaar of steel and scent. Traders bicker, emissaries sip mineral tonics in silence, and somewhere nearby a human diplomat meets a Dariathi chancellor. You listen in. The Dariathi leans close. Their spines ripple with unease. Why don't you retaliate, they ask. The human diplomat smiles gently, adjusting a coat with no insignia. We don't need to, you'll do it for us. The Dariathi recoils, confused. Do what? Forget. And then Port Remiax is gone. No explosion, no virus. Just a quiet fade, like it stepped out of the galaxy while no one was looking. One day ship stopped docking. The next, navigation system stopped registering its coordinates. Eventually, not even stories remained. Well, except here. The archive remembers. You realize what's happening. This part of the archive isn't about vengeance or even documentation. It's about absence as a weapon. Not the kind that wounds, the kind that erodes. Slowly. Inevitably. The old Terran phrase floats to the surface of your thoughts. Uninvited, but apt. A shadow can't betray you if you take away the light. Some xenopoliticists still argue whether humanity's withdrawal was a form of collective psychological warfare, the strategic removal of attention, of participation, letting the rest of the galaxy cannibalize its own diplomacy in the vacuum of Earth's presence. Others think it was something quieter, that humans simply got tired of pretending the galaxy was worth the effort. You drift to the top of the shaft, where the last surviving map node glows faintly, an unnamed route long and untraveled. You reach for it. The plaque beneath reads, Access denied. Authorized for memory-bearing entities only. And just as you're about to pull your hand back, the wall opens anyway. No alarms. No warnings, just quiet permission, because the archive has already decided. You remember now, and you cannot unremember. The corridor beyond the sealed node is colder. Not physically, your suit sensors don't detect a temperature drop, but something, in the way the air moves, feels more distant, like you've stepped into a memory that no longer wants to be touched. Even the walls are different now, no longer alive or pulsating, just smooth matte black alloy, unreflective, designed not to be noticed. This isn't a place for tourists. This is a vault of things meant to be remembered, but not found. The corridor leads you to a single room, bare, angular, unlit, except for a soft golden shimmer at the center. A table, and on it, a holographic projection frozen mid-flicker. 2 fleets, orbiting a dying red giant. One vastly outnumbered, one barely armed. You step closer. The system was called Iota Ashvel, technically unremarkable. No major mineral wealth, no strategic relevance. But 200 years ago, it was the site of one of the most controversial moments in diplomatic history. A full alien armada, drifting, crippled, out of supplies, after an interstellar miscalculation left them stranded. 67 ships, 4,000 crew. They were dying. And Earth, by every cold metric, had no reason to help. But they did. They sent aid, water, power, navigation assistance. They even towed half the fleet to a safe orbit. Not a single life was lost. The galactic community called it an act of mercy. But Earth called it something else. You swipe the controls and the projection advances. A transmission log blinks to life. The lead Terran vessel broadcasts a message to the saved fleet. You are now in our debt. This is not a threat. It is a truth. Repay it when the time comes, or don't. Just know, we will remember. The file ends. You blink, that's it? No trade agreement, no follow-up. Just a sentence, quiet, clinical, and delivered with the emotional warmth of a firmware update. But the implications were seismic, because the fleet never repaid. 2 decades. Later, they signed a contract supplying weapon-grade fuel to a coalition that sanctioned Earth's diplomatic isolation. An indirect betrayal, technically legal, thoroughly deniable. But the archive remembered. You touch the table again, and the room shifts. The ceiling becomes sky. The floor becomes orbit. You're aboard a ghost reconstruction of one of the Terran rescue vessels. Its deck eerily silent, its lights still set to diplomatic neutral. A wall panel glows. You press it. Another message plays. This one wasn't broadcast. It was internal. A captain's log. They think kindness is forgettable, that mercy is just an accident. But we keep score, we always have, not to punish but to calibrate. Another pause. One day the galaxy will ask why we remember everything. They'll ask what we're planning. And the truth is, we're not. We just stopped pretending they'd ever get it right. The log ends. The room returns to black metal and silence. You sit at the table, because honestly, you need to. This wasn't vengeance. This wasn't revenge. This was something more permanent. A kind of emotional accounting system humanity had perfected, not as a weapon, but as infrastructure. You think about all the cultures that assumed humans would forgive, or forget, or eventually return with apologies of their own. But Earth didn't need to return. They left something better. They left memory. Some interstellar ethicists still argue whether this was fair, whether it's right to hold the galaxy accountable for mistakes generations removed. But others counter with a question that burns like ion fire. What does it mean to forgive someone who has never truly apologized? You rise again, the air is heavier, your own heartbeat feels louder in your ears, and in the silence of this memory, you begin to understand something very few outside of Earth ever do. Humanity doesn't forget because it's petty. It remembers because it cares, enough to make sure you do too. Even if it takes 1,000 years. The next chamber doesn't have doors. It just unfolds, walls curling back like the petals of some ancient iron flower. You step through and immediately feel it in your bones. This is older than anything else in the archive. Not by years. Not by centuries. This part was built in the first silence, the one no one talks about, the one that came before Earth chose to be quiet. The room is massive, hollow. No walls, no floor, no ceiling, just darkness. And in the middle of that nothingness, a machine, or what's left of one. It's spherical, maybe 10 meters wide. Suspended, in mid-air by nothing you can see. The surface is cracked, darkened, its inner systems exposed like ribs after impact. Yet somehow, it's still humming. Faintly. You step closer, and your HUD flashes an old designation. Unit 88Y. Codename. Forgiveness Engine. You pause. You've heard of this. Rumors, mostly. Whispers from old Terran PSYOPs files that were accidentally leaked across a dozen starnets. A machine that could extract guilt. Not metaphorically, literally. The theory was simple. You're a diplomat. You sit in the chair. The machine reads your neurological patterns. It identifies memories you're ashamed of, failures, betrayals, lies. And then, it pulls them out, stores them, like data, like currency, leaving you lighter, more agreeable, easier to deal with, a better ally, the perfect diplomat. You circle the sphere slowly. The surface is covered in etchings, patterns like veins curling in fractal loops, each one pulsing faintly, as if it's breathing, or thinking, or both. And then it speaks. Observer 7184, you are not on the list. The voice is colder than the AI you met before. Less personality, more precision. State your authorization code. You hesitate. Then you lie. Beta Echo 12. I'm here to audit memory retention protocols. There's a pause. Then, accepted. You exhale slowly. The sphere lowers, slightly, revealing a hatch that irises open with a wet hiss. Inside is a chamber barely large enough for a seated figure. You step in and suddenly, it remembers for you. You see diplomats, hundreds of them, sitting in this same machine, twitching as the process unfolds, each one leaving something behind, some fragment of guilt or shame, not erased, not forgotten, collected, the idea wasn't to eliminate guilt. It was to archive it. You watch one of them, an Eclairi ambassador with silver blue skin and 6 fingers, whisper through tears. I knew the bombing would happen. I didn't warn them. And the machine? It takes that pain like a tax collector, folds it into its memory. The ambassador leaves, smiling, lighter. You wonder how many treaties were signed this way. You wonder how many species mistook the relief they felt as forgiveness, never realizing it wasn't theirs to give. Your HUD overlays a name, Project. EO, Emotional Offset, designed not by soldiers, but by therapists, by grief engineers, by cultural liaisons who understood something most of the galaxy never quite grasped, that humans don't need weapons when they have reminders. One inscription catches your eye, carved into the inner rim of the machine's core panel, just barely visible. Forgiveness is a weight you earn, not one you remove. Some Terran philosophers once argued this project was unethical, that removing guilt was erasing responsibility. But the counter-argument, documented in a now-lost file, was chilling. We do not erase guilt, we keep it, so that others won't forget what they're capable of. The machine begins to hum louder. You back away slowly. It doesn't pursue, just waits, like a priest who's heard too many confessions to be moved anymore. Like a librarian surrounded by books too dangerous to burn and too sacred to shelve. As you exit, the lights dim. Not in anger, not in threat, just closure. The hatch seals behind you. You feel it the moment the door vanishes. The weight of memory has shifted, not from you, but into you. Because now you know something the galaxy was never meant to understand. Earth didn't build machines to forget. They built them to remember what others wanted to forget for themselves. And then they walked away. You climb now, not metaphorically. The corridor physically slopes upward, its incline deceptive at first, then undeniable. Gravity seems to disagree with itself the higher you go, sometimes pulling backward, sometimes sideways, as if the archive itself is unsure you belong up here, but you keep going. Eventually, the walls open into a dome, weathered, wind-scoured, exposed to starlight through an opening at its peak. It doesn't match the rest of the archive's smooth, bioengineered aesthetic. This space feels older, simpler, almost ceremonial, and in the center, a pedestal. Carved from native stone, rough and worn. On it, a single object. A mask. It's not ceremonial, not decorative. This one's practical. Scratched, scorched. The kind worn by first-wave planetary scouts or emergency responders during colony fires. A Terran design unmistakable even after centuries. Your HUD struggles to categorize it, but there's an old marker on the inner band. You recognize the symbol. A simplified Earth encircled by a broken chain. Terran Survivor Corps. You frown. The Corps was disbanded 500 years ago after the disaster at Calvion's Reach. The official story? Political backlash. The real story? A colony, human, was wiped out in a miscalculated containment protocol by a multi-species research coalition. The council at the time ruled it a necessary loss, regretful, unavoidable. No reparations were made, and one planet, the one whose representatives voted not to acknowledge the incident, simply vanished a decade later, not physically, not violently, just culturally. They were still there technically, still had citizens, cities, comms traffic, but no one traded with them. No one acknowledged their transmissions. Their name fell off maps. Even automated systems ignored them, as if their coordinates were suddenly invalid. They became a myth. You run your gloved fingers along the mask. A projection activates, static at first. Then the face of a human, an older woman, hair pulled back, streaked with white and ash. Her voice is low, flat, tired. They apologized, but only for the outcome, not the choice. She sets the mask on the pedestal you now stand before. One species refused. said Earth should move on, said what happened wasn't intentional, that we should consider the context, the complexity, the bureaucracy. She looks directly into the camera. So we did, she leans in, voice dropping. We considered the context, we studied the history, we noted the hesitation, and then, quietly, we remembered. The recording ends, and you suddenly notice something subtle. The entire room is designed like a memorial, but not one of mourning, one of recollection. Every line in the stone, every beam of starlight from the broken ceiling points toward the pedestal, toward the mask. Some cultures would have used that mask as a symbol of martyrdom or forgiveness. But Earth used it as proof. That survival doesn't mean acceptance. That moving on doesn't mean letting go. Some exoanthropologists still argue whether humanity's silence after Calvion's reach was fair, that the species who voted against acknowledgement weren't the ones who pressed the final button, weren't the ones who dropped the containment shield too early. But the archive doesn't care. It remembers the vote. It remembers the hesitation. And it remembers the one who said, "Let's not escalate this further." That sentence apparently was enough. The myth that followed is chilling, that Earth didn't need to retaliate, that it simply withdrew its recognition, that it let entropy do the rest, and you're starting to believe it. Because now, as you stand in this echo of grief and resolve, you realize something. Earth didn't need to erase anyone. They just needed to stop reminding the galaxy that someone existed. The rest happened naturally. You descend now. Not a hallway this time. A staircase narrow and uneven as if carved by hand into the shell of the archive's spine. The walls sweat condensation. Gravity pulses inconsistently. You grip the rails not because you need to, but because it feels like something wants you to fall. The descent ends at a modest doorway, unlocked, unmarked. Inside is a space like none before, not a vault, not a shrine, a living space, stone floors, woven mats, air filled with incense and ozone, and silence, not the calculated kind that speaks volumes but the deep, honest quiet of a monastery. They sit cross-legged on the floor, scattered across the room, children, or at least they appear to be, young faces, stillness in their posture, eyes far too old for their bodies. Your HUD glitches slightly trying to scan them. All identifiers return the same 3 words. Memory-bearing variant. You've heard the rumors. Terran biogeneticists centuries ago had begun an experiment. Design a bloodline of humans who cannot forget. Not metaphorically, literally. Genetic memory retention. Perfect recall. Total emotional fidelity to every experience they've ever had or inherited. They called them the remembered. You never thought they were real, but they are. One of the children looks up. A boy, maybe 10 by appearance. His voice is soft, patient, almost adult. You're the first outsider this cycle. You nod, unsure whether to speak, but they're already motioning for you to sit. You do. Another child, this one with silver-rimmed eyes, begins to speak. Not to you, but to memory itself. Her words are fluid, deliberate. A litany of events, dates, names, failures, regrets, apologies, never spoken aloud. Her voice doesn't shake. "We are not here to judge," she says. "We are here to remember." One of them brings you a bowl, warm liquid, thick with minerals. You sip it, taste ash and salt and something metallic. That, the boy explains, is the flavor of betrayal. You nearly choke. He smiles, not cruelly but knowingly. We drink it every morning to never forget the taste. You stare at them. They aren't angry. They aren't afraid. They are accountants of suffering, not emotionally stunted but emotionally perfected. Each child a walking ledger of humanity's greatest grievances, not for vengeance but for continuity. One girl shows you a carved tablet, not digital, wood, worn at the edges. These are the last words of the Varelian consulate before they collapsed. They asked for amnesty. Earth did not reply. We remember that silence. You study their faces. None of them flinch. They've been raised not to flinch. Some xenopsychologists once claimed this program was unethical, that no child should be burdened with the grief of generations, that Earth had gone too far. But Earth didn't respond. They let the silence speak. You glance. Around one wall bears a mural, hand-painted. Primitive. A galaxy drawn in swirling charcoal and a single golden thread stretching across it. Unbroken. You trace it with your eyes. It doesn't intersect planets or factions. It only intersects decisions. Moments in history when someone made a choice, and Earth chose to remember. You look back at the children. Do you ever forget anything at all? The boy shrugs. We don't forget, but we forgive sometimes. Not because they ask, but because we need to. Memory must be clean, not stained by bitterness. Another child speaks up, her voice even emotionless. But some things cannot be forgiven, only observed. You sit with them a little longer. They don't ask you to stay. They don't ask you to leave. Eventually, you rise. The girl with the silver-rimmed eyes meets your gaze. The galaxy fears weapons, but they should fear memory more. And then, she smiles, softly. Good thing we're just kids, right? You leave the room with shaking hands, because you're no longer sure what scares you more, the ones who forget too easily, or the ones who never will. The archive shifts again. Not with motion, with tone. You feel it in your chest before you see it, a kind of stillness more absolute than silence, a pressure without weight, a sense of being watched, not by cameras or sensors, but by expectation itself. The next room is vast, circular, quiet in a reverent, almost sacred way. No lights flicker, no air hums, just a single platform surrounded by a dozen alien figures, all holograms looping endlessly, caught in a moment you weren't meant to witness. They kneel, not as equals, as petitioners. Before them stands a human, cloaked in black, face hidden, posture unreadable, not aggressive, not dismissive, just present. You step forward. A plaque beneath the platform pulses, the ceremony of almost forgiveness year, 3421. After contact, neutral sector, 13A. You've heard of these ceremonies. Once per cycle, in a sector deemed politically neutral, alien representatives gather to request forgiveness from Earth. Not legally, not diplomatically. Symbolically, it was supposed to be a sign of humility, of reconciliation. But Earth never responded. The human in the projection stands unmoving. The figures before them speak in turns, pleading, justifying, apologizing. One offers reparations, another offers planetary access, one even offers genetic tribute, which is both wildly outdated and ethically terrifying. Each is met with the same response. None. The human remains silent. Not out of cruelty, out of clarity. Eventually, the petitioners stop speaking. One collapses in exhaustion. Another flickers out mid-plea. The cycle resets. You realize the loop isn't broken, it's the point. You climb onto the platform. The projection adapts, freezing, then slowly fading, leaving you alone under a single beam of pale light. A console rises before you. Primitive interface, touchscreen retrofitted with analog dials. You turn the central wheel. The display shifts. Dozens of similar ceremonies, hundreds even, held across centuries by dozens of species, each one asking Earth for forgiveness in different ways, some desperate, some performative. One even arrives, with a choir and fireworks. It did not go well. The response is always the same. Nothing, not even a message. No delegate, no remote voice, just presence, an observer, and then absence. Some argue Earth was being cruel, that refusing to answer was a rejection of healing. But others, particularly those from cultures that experienced deep memory traditions, understood the subtext. Earth wasn't punishing them. Earth was letting them choose how they wanted to be remembered. One inscription on the edge of the platform haunts you. We do not deny your sorrow, but sorrow is not restitution. You flip through more recordings. Some are dignified, others are desperate. In one, a reptilian envoy screams for nearly 20 minutes before dissolving into quiet sobbing. The human says nothing, because the ceremony was never about what Earth would say, it was about what they would not. You wonder, was this mercy? Was silence Earth's way of letting species process their guilt without incurring further shame, or was it the inverse? A warning that once you betrayed Earth, their silence would speak for them forever. You step off the platform. The holograms do not resume. This time, the light simply fades, and the chamber begins to close. Before the walls meet, one final projection flickers into view just for a moment, a single Terran word, untranslated. But even if you don't know the letters, you feel its weight in your chest. Known. Not condemned. Not forgiven. Just known. The door seals behind you, and you realize the worst thing Earth could do to someone wasn't vengeance, it wasn't exile, it was to leave you recorded in a memory they'd never erase, and never speak of again. This time the archive doesn't guide you. There is no doorway, no map, no lighting cue. You simply stand in a corridor until you feel a tug, barely perceptible, like the gravity of a thought that refuses to be ignored. You follow it. The walls. Narrow again, smooth and bone-white, narrowing to a single threshold where light spills out in quiet pulses. The room beyond isn't like the others. No living architecture. No ceremonial design, just debris, a broken console, a collapsed support strut, shattered observation glass. This was once a control center, or maybe a transmission hub. Whatever it was, time didn't spare it. But in the center, untouched amid the wreckage, floats a single-star remnant, not real, but a holographic reconstruction suspended mid-collapse. A frozen supernova, its arms splayed like the last breath of a god. Inside that simulated explosion, a signal. Your HUD decodes it automatically, high frequency, encoded through gamma pulses and exotic matter patterns. Most species would have missed it or ignored it. You watch as the signal unfurls in patterns your visor translates into text, to those who knew what they did. This is your echo. The pulse repeats, shorter this time. Refined. Condensed. And then your visor flashes a file name. Echo 9, Terran origin point, pre-fade timeline. You sit, because that's what this room is for. Listening. The signal was never meant to be intercepted by random ships or curious diplomats. It was directional, precise, encoded in the deathlight of a star long extinguished, and its message is clear. We did not fire. We did not speak. We withdrew. Because you already knew what you'd done. There's no signature, no timestamp. Just a single punctuation mark, a period. You lean forward, transfixed by the quiet honesty of it. Not a threat, not even an accusation. Just a notification. You ask your AI assistant for context. It dredges up a classified entry from centuries ago, buried in interstellar black box archives. Incident, Event Horizon 137. Location, Varghese Rim. Details, star unexpectedly collapsed. Council suspects sabotage. Terran presence suspected but unconfirmed, but the logs cut off. Nothing conclusive, no evidence, no follow-up. That's how Earth works now, isn't it? They don't confess. They don't deny. They just let you wonder. Some astrophysicists believe the supernova was natural. Others claim it was triggered, artificially. But the archive doesn't argue. It stores. Because sometimes Earth doesn't need to send fleets, or emissaries, or ultimatums. Sometimes all they send is a reminder. You watch the signal again. This time you understand it on a deeper level. The supernova wasn't a response. It was a canvas. And the encoded message inside, it wasn't for you. It was for them, the ones who made the wrong choice and then spent centuries pretending they didn't. This room is a monument not to war, but to unresolved memory. A Terran philosophy once said, "The truth needs no armor. It only needs patience." Chorson, you step back. The room dims. On the wall behind you, barely visible through dust and darkness, a single word pulses in old Terran script. Remembered. You stand in silence for a long time, not because you're processing, but because you don't want to forget. And now that you've seen this place, you know you won't. The corridor that follows is narrower than before. Not physically, but psychologically. You feel it constrict around your thoughts, every breath deeper than the last, every footstep echoing like a heartbeat inside someone else's memory. You emerge into what looks like a gallery, not of art, of bodies, not corpses, replicas. Lifelike down to the smallest imperfection, scales, fur, synthetic skin, breathing apparatuses, each encased in transparent columns of soft energy, illuminated by quiet, cool light. You walk between them. Species you recognize. Species that no longer exist. A few you've only ever seen in speculative archives or old war tribunal records. All of them standing, silent, gazing forward as if waiting for a verdict that never came. Your visor displays a label as you pass each one. Velkari Prime Council. Failed to acknowledge atrocity on Heliath 7th. Zerinthian heirs. Authored denial documents against Earth's colonial sovereignty. Gosselid Twin Alliance. Provided weapons during the Bastion rebellions. Issued no statement. And then you reach the center. A figure unlike the others. Human, but clearly not original. Its posture is too careful. Its skin too flawless. The eyes. Wrong. Like someone had tried to recreate humanity from second-hand memories and third-hand intentions. You stare at it, and it stares back. The label pulses softly. Zixel Construct. Designation. Iterant 4. Species. Synth-born Emulation Unit. Purpose. Reconciliation via mimicry. Result. Denied entry. Observation status. Passive. You remember the story now. A species so desperate to earn Earth's forgiveness that they redesigned themselves in humanity's image. They altered their physiology, reconstructed speech patterns, even simulated Terran brainwave templates, and sent this construct. As an emissary, Earth received it, listened politely, and then simply replied, "We do not require an echo, we require honesty." The Zixel emulation program ended the same year. No reply from Earth, no acknowledgement. And that silence? It was louder than any fleet. Some socio-cultural analysts debated whether humanity's refusal to engage was cruel or compassionate, whether it was an invitation to be genuine or a subtle extermination of falsehoods. Others just called it what it was. Clarity. You reach out toward the human-like figure. Its eyes twitch barely, a flicker of awareness. "Do you feel anything?" you ask aloud. The construct does not reply, but its gaze lowers, a motion that shouldn't be possible in stasis, and then you realize it remembers too. Whatever intelligence lingers inside isn't mimicking humanity anymore. It's learning from their silence. You turn. Behind you now, the whole gallery feels different. Not like a warning, like a lesson. A wall lights up. A projection appears, a quote plain and brutal. Imitation is not apology. Remorse is not reconstruction. Becoming us does not undo what you did to us. There is no author. But you know who said it. Earth. They didn't reject the Zixal because they were synthetic. They rejected them because they weren't honest about why they were doing it. And that's what Earth always wanted. Not perfection, not even justice, just truth. Unedited, unperformed, uncomfortable, You look one last time at the emulated human. It's still watching. You nod, because now you understand something the galaxy keeps trying to forget. Earth never asked for submission, only sincerity. And when it doesn't get that, it remembers. The gallery fades behind you like a memory retreating into the mind's quiet corners. You walk for a long time. Maybe minutes. Maybe hours. The archive no longer bothers to count time for you. Eventually, the path brings you to a corridor so narrow you have to turn sideways to pass through until without warning it widens. Not into a chamber, into sky. Simulated, of course. A perfect atmospheric rendering. But the effect is real enough to take your breath. You are standing at the edge of an ice shelf under a ceiling that resembles a twilight dome. Around you, snow. Cold. Silence. And buried in that endless white field, half sunken and iced over, is a satellite. The kind humanity used at the end of their visible reign. You approach. The metal is blackened, scratched with micrometeorite scars, its solar panels shattered. One blinking blue light remains, steady, stubborn, and waiting. You wipe away the frost with your gloved hand. The nameplate reveals itself in barely legible Terran script, Eulora 9, final message node, no response required, of course. You've heard of this one. It was the last transmission Earth ever sent before the fade. No ambassadors. No farewell tour. Just one message, launched across 12 known sectors on encrypted radio bands. Most species received it. Few understood. No one replied. You kneel beside the satellite. A hatch hisses open. A dull glow warms the air, and then the message plays, not as audio, but as atmosphere. Your visor darkens slightly as it unfolds. A woman's voice, Terran, calm, not friendly, not hostile. To those still listening, we know what you want. You want to understand why we stopped speaking, why we closed the gates, why we walked away. A pause. It wasn't anger. It wasn't war. It wasn't fear. It was knowing. Message shifts. Now images, grainy footage of burning treaties, orbiting councils. A moment when the galactic community voted to pause aid to a human colony in crisis. To observe the political fallout. Children, crying, air running out. No rescue came. You taught us that mercy is political. That truth requires quorum, that justice has to wait for consensus. We do not work that way. A beat. So we chose silence. The message's tone doesn't change. It doesn't crescendo. There's no cinematic swell. This is not a threat. This is not a test. This is not even a goodbye. And then the final lines, etched now into history, quoted by poets and feared by diplomats. We will not forget, we will not forgive, and we will not return, but we will be here, watching, listening, recording, because we know what you did. And that will always be enough. The message ends. No fade out, no soft piano note, just the return of the cold, the wind, and the quiet heartbeat of the satellite. You sit in the snow for a long time, watching your own breath mist against your visor. Some intergalactic cultures interpreted the message as a bluff, a scare tactic. Others, particularly those that had stood beside Earth during the long betrayals, believed it was something else. A promise, not of retribution, of remembrance. You look up at the simulated sky. Not a star stirs. But you know, somewhere, humanity is still out there, not gone, just quiet. Because the truth is, when Earth says it won't return, that's when you know it's already watching. The snow fades beneath your feet. No transition, no warning. One step you're in a memory of frost and regret. The next, darkness. A velvet dark. Not empty, but expectant. You walk forward. There's no path, but there's direction. A sensation like gravity pulling not your body but your story. guiding it gently toward a conclusion it wrote before you ever arrived. Eventually, you reach a chamber lit only by reflections. No lights, just walls of obsidian, perfectly smooth, reflecting everything but yourself. You're invisible here. Everyone is except the words. A console flickers on in front of you, hovering slightly above the ground. Plain interface. No password, no encryption. It wants to be opened. You touch the surface and the archive breathes to life one last time. A single file appears. Eyes only, Terran classification. Memory level, absolute. It shouldn't open, but it does. Lines of text scroll down, slow at first, then faster. Names, coordinates, political events. Council decisions. Treaty violations. Whisper campaigns. Failed apologies. All documented. All remembered. And at the top of the file, in a quiet font that almost seems ashamed to exist, you were never meant to hear this. You stop scrolling, because the next part isn't a log, it's a transcript, an internal Terran debate captured centuries ago. Not for the public, not even for their own government. Private, honest, the way people speak when they believe no one is listening. One voice, female, firm, tired. We gave them centuries. We bent, we explained, we trusted, and they turned it into a game. Another, male, younger, edged with fire. We should have retaliated, set an example. A third, neutral, synthesized, likely AI. Retribution teaches nothing. Silence lasts longer. The first again. Then let the record be our retaliation. A pause in the transcript, then the final entry. Let them wonder why we left. Let them guess if we're still watching. But above all, let them remember. Let them never feel safe enough to forget. Your hands tremble. Not out of fear, out of recognition. Because this was never about hiding. Earth didn't disappear. Earth withdrew. Not to punish, but to document. To become the moral black box of the galaxy. Not judge. Not jury. But witness. Some historians once speculated that humanity developed faster than its peers because of its emotional complexity, that its wars and philosophies were born from its ability to hold contradictory truths at once: compassion and vengeance, mercy and memory. But here, in this final archive, it becomes clear: Earth didn't evolve past its pain. It simply made sure no one else could pretend it didn't happen. The screen flickers. A question appears. Do you believe they were right? It waits. No timer. No pressure. Just a single prompt. You type, yes. The file dissolves. No fanfare. No confirmation. Just gone. But behind you, one of the black walls flickers, briefly, and in its mirror-smooth surface you finally see something reflected: yourself. And behind you, Earth. Not a map, not a memory, just an outline in the distance. Still watching, still remembering. You walk the final corridor with the feeling that something is closing behind you. Not doors, not walls, but options. As though each step seals away the possibility of denial, of innocence, of pretending this journey was ever just exploration. This was always a reckoning. The corridor leads you back to where you started. The chamber with the living archive, the one that pulsed and breathed and whispered memory through the walls. But now it's different. It recognizes you. The sphere at its heart no longer pulses gently. It beats in perfect rhythm with your breath. You've changed, not in body, in designation. A voice rises, not spoken, but formed directly inside your thoughts. Not words, not commands, acknowledgement. The archive speaks. You have seen, you have heard, you have remembered. Another pulse. The bioskin walls ripple with ancient emotion. Now you must choose. A console rises before you, unmarked. A clean panel, two sides, one dimly lit soft blue. The other, black, untouched, absorbing the light around it. The archive offers no guidance. because this is not its decision, it's yours. You touch the blue panel. The walls breathe in response, gently, almost like relief. The archive speaks again. Then you will carry memory without weapon, without threat. You will be the quiet voice, the record keeper, the one who tells others what Earth never shouted. Another pulse. A sigil appears on your HUD. Not Terran, not alien. Something in between. The witness mark. You understand what it means without being told. It means you were trusted to remember, to not distort, to not exploit, to hold humanity's memory as it is, not as others want it to be. The archive shifts one final time. You're lifted gently, like starlight being drawn toward gravity. No motion, no engine, just a rising sensation until you are once again at the surface, stars overhead, dust beneath your boots. But it's not the same. Because now, you see differently. Every comm signal, every diplomatic exchange, every denied apology, every silent corner of the galaxy where someone still wonders, why did Earth walk away? You know the answer. They didn't leave. They just stopped being available to people who never meant to understand them in the first place. Some philosophers say memory is a burden. Earth didn't agree. Earth believed memory was a gift, offered rarely, guarded fiercely, and never, ever, given back once taken. And now? You carry it, every silence, every betrayal, every almost. You turn to leave and the stars blink above you just once, as if they too remember. The ship hums softly around you now. Your boots are off. The room is dark, but not the kind of dark that frightens, it's the kind that listens. A quiet stillness, the kind you only get after the last page turns and the story lingers in the air like perfume. You feel it now, don't you? That weight, not heavy, but deep. The sense that you've traveled far without leaving your bed, that you've touched something older than war and sharper than truth. Memory. You've stood among the names. You've heard the voice that never yells. You've walked through silence that was louder than any weapon, and now you're back. Changed. Still, that's what Earth left behind. Not vengeance, not fear, but the ability to remember. To pass it on. A story that refuses to become fiction. So sleep now. Let your body rest while your mind lingers in orbit. Let the stars drift just outside your reach, and the hum of your thoughts carry you gently toward dreams. Because somewhere, out, there in the black, Earth still waits, not with judgment, not with anger, just with perfect memory. And tonight, it trusts you to hold a small part of that. Good night, traveler. You're not alone. You never were.